Hello and welcome to this very special edition right here on ET Now. We're calling it India Business Gets Better. And it is really Modi Sarkar's moment in the sun. An 18-month push to make business easier in India has finally started to yield results. India's ranking has jumped up many notches. 12 or 4 is what we're going to debate right here on this show in the World Bank's list of ease of doing business. And this has come from just 2 areas: improvement in ease of starting business and, of course, securing an electricity connection. Important to remember here that this survey really pertains to just Delhi and Mumbai, which has 53 and 47% weightage, respectively. We gotten a word from Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, who says that there will be more steps taken to improve India's ranking further, and in no time will we break into at least the top 100 club.
I'm extremely grateful that the World Bank has started taking notice of the fact that our business rankings are growing and that India is now becoming an easier place to do business. Last month, the World Economic Forum had also come out with similar ratings and we moved up substantially. I believe that this 12-point movement doesn't reflect the full pace of reforms that we've done. And in the year to come, a large number of steps which we've already taken are going to be reflected in the rankings next year. These rankings were only up to the 1st of June. I'm trying to make the Income Tax Act much simpler. Yesterday I've announced a committee which will recast some of those provisions. The Companies Act complications we are trying to remove. There's a committee at work. There is still an area on enforcement of contracts, easier adjudication of disputes. So we've brought out an ordinance for a fast-track arbitration procedure. We've also brought on another ordinance 2 days ago with regard to establishment of a commercial court in each high court in the country. And therefore, each one of these steps will add to the ease of doing business as far as India is concerned.
So a lot of startups are mushrooming in India. How do you see their contribution towards the business ranking of India?
Well, the startups are technology-based. Fortunately, there are not too many government clearances in this. And therefore, in a free business environment, there's a lot of scope for them to boom.
So, resolving insolvency is a big market. How is the government looking at it?
Well, we are in the last stage of formulation of the bankruptcy law. In the coming session, I hope to introduce it.
Just the last question. What kind of political backing or political support is the government ready to give as far as the ease of banking for India is concerned?
Ease of banking?
So, ease of...
These are hundreds of steps required as far as central and the states are concerned. And therefore, we are trying to nudge the states also into making these reforms. And we've already have state rankings as far as ease of business is concerned. And it's a top priority issue as far as government is concerned.
All right, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, understandably a happy and a satisfied man today, speaks exclusively to ET Now. After, of course, India did notch up those levels in the ease of doing business ranking. But we also got in an exclusive interaction going with DIPP Secretary Amitabh Kant, a man who's worked overtime to see those ratings go up. And he believes that this ranking improvement does not factor in many of the steps that were taken by the government post-May 2015, because that was really the cutoff. And if those steps were indeed taken, India would have ranked a lot higher. He expects us to break into the top 50 club in the next 2 to 3 years.
To my mind, the challenge is to take India to the top 50 position. And India should be able to do this in the next 3 to 4 years for various reasons. First and foremost, that there is a reversal of a trend. You know, last 4 years, India's position had been falling down year after year, year after year, year after year.
We've notched up.
We've jumped up 12 positions. The government has brought in a number of institutional changes post-May 31st. For instance, the National Company Law Tribunal, which has been passed by the Supreme Court.
Which have really not been notified.
Or the setting up of commercial courts. Or, for instance, the Vishwanathan Committee is going to submit its report, and you will have easy entry and exit. Now, these are major institutional changes. I don't think India is it's possible for India to jump up many notches and go to 50 position till we don't improve on enforcement of contracts,
yes.
till we don't improve on easy entry and exit and so on.
The startup ecosystem in India is really buzzing with action. It's really mushrooming with every new startup that's coming to the fore. You've gone up 29 notches, definitely since 2004, but we're still at 155. For that ecosystem to flourish, what is it that we're going to see from the government end which will facilitate it more?
So it used to take 4 months.
That's right.
To establish a company in India. It's come down to 29 days. To my mind, we should be able to establish a company in just 1 day. In fact, to my mind, India must target that it must make companies register in 1 hour.
We are still working on the public-private partnership model. I know you're closely involved with that. But what is it that the government will do to ensure, because this seems to suggest there's a lot of litigation that happens between government on one hand and the private parties on the other. What is it that you're going to ensure in that relationship which is going to enforce contracts? Because there is very little respect, if I may, for enforcement of contracts in India.
We must have e-filing, we must have e-judgments, we must have commercial courts in all these places. And unless and until that is not done, and I think there's a huge scope for radical improvement in enforcement of contract.
All right, from the policymakers who are really spearheading that entire initiative, time to get to you some of the biggest voices from India Inc., who are all very happy that India has made these big strides on the ease of doing business, but maintain that there's a long way still that needs to be covered.
I think India should continue to move up the scale. Yeah,
what are the immediate reforms needed, if I may ask you?
And it depends on different states have different areas of concern.
It's very good news that in such a short time, the government's seriousness about wanting to change ease of doing business has somewhat resulted in an improvement. But remember, it's a very marginal improvement, and we have long ways to go, because it's just, it's still another 100 points from what the Prime Minister said we would like to be at. And we must work harder at not just the ease of starting a business, but ease of operating a business where the real pain lies. No muggy noodle-like incidents happen, none of these things happen. That's equally important. And then closing down a business, if it's necessary, successful, not to say, is also a nightmare in the country.
It's not good enough. Clearly, for a country like ours, which is an emerging economy, which wants to industrialize, which wants the economy to grow, there is a lot more work which needs to be done. The good thing, however, is that a lot of this work has already begun. So what we are seeing is early signs of that improvement are quite visible right now. And going forward, I've seen this in discussions both with the central government and a number of state governments. There is the competitive spirit that has got infused now within India amongst the states. I think in a positive sense is good competition.
There are many required, but there are political and other compulsions. Labour reform is very important. Idea is not just to sack people, that's not the point. But as we say, today you are hesitating to employ people. Everybody knows that, because you may employ today, but you can't let them go tomorrow. I'm talking of workmen. So the labour reform should take place. GST has to come, where I blame both. Mainly Congress, but other opposition parties are in favour now. At the level of the PM, we have an outstanding PM. He has to extend his hand of friendship and cooperation towards the opposition to get some of the bills in Rajya Sabha passed.
I'm a great believer of the India story. I'm a great believer that things are moving in the right direction. It is becoming more efficient, it's becoming simpler, and I'm very certain as you keep moving forward, these notches that we've increased by 12 will be much, much higher in the future.
All right, let's take the discussion forward, and I've got three very, very special guests joining us right here on ET now. We've got Onno Ruhl, the country director, India of World Bank, Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, a very, very vocal voice from India Inc., and Dr. Rajiv Kumar. Thanks very much, each one of you, for being with us. Onno Ruhl, because this listing comes from your stable, my question to you is this a jump of 12 odd points if you look at the old methodology, or is this a 4-notch higher rating than last time around if you actually refer to the new methodology, from 134 to 130, or is it 142 to 130 now?
Well, you know, the way I look at it is last year the World Bank issued a report in which we ranked India number 142, and this year we're issuing a report where we rank India number 130. So that's a pretty clear answer. We can have an interesting methodological debate. But the bottom line is it's an encouraging start to the government's efforts to improve the ranking.
Kiran, I want you to be candid here. India has, of course, jumped up 12 spots. That's the headline, at least the government would want us to believe. But were you expecting better improvement than this? Because we know we're really close to the top 50 club that the PM would have wanted.
I think, this is a very good improvement we have shown in a very short time, because if you think about it, we have moved up 12 places in less than a year, and I think from 142 to 130 in this kind of period is a very impressive score. And I think we have done extremely well in terms of addressing, addressing the kind of need of expediting incorporation of companies. I'm sure even if you look at the startup space, I'm sure the time taken to start up a company has grossly and greatly reduced. I think we've done extremely well in addressing some of these issues. But there are some old issues, I think, that do pull us down, largely on account of various kinds of clearances that state governments do sort of insist on, such as, construction permits, environmental clearance, pollution control board clearance. All these actually, and of course one of the biggest areas where we really need to focus is on insolvency. I think once we focus on bringing out a very, very progressive insolvency law, I think we will see us jump to a much, much higher place. So I think from that point of view, I think this should be viewed optimistically. I think it's very encouraging, and I really congratulate the government in actually focusing on the ease of doing business issue. And believe me, this is also bringing in a lot of focus even at the state level, because every single state, when it is addressing its global investor meet, is focusing on ease of doing business. So collectively, it is certainly moving the needle very positively. We need to see the needle move even further, and I think the insolvency law will certainly make a big difference. I think we need to make sure that any dispute resolution also has to be done in a way that basically makes it easy to do business in India. I think we are definitely going to see even further reduction in time to incorporate businesses, but we should also make it as easy to close down businesses. I think that's where the ease of doing business will become a very big opportunity for India to improve its rankings.
That's a very valid point indeed. It has to be as easy to get in and get out of business if it doesn't really work out. But Dr. Kumar, do you believe a 4-point jump or a 12-point jump, whichever methodology you follow, is reason to celebrate, or are you disappointed at the pace at which it has happened?
Well, these things take time. So the fact that we have improved 4 places, I think, is a good sign. We're in the right direction, because in the previous 2 or 3 reports, our rank had been slipping. But the fact is that we have only improved 4 ranks. So I mean, there is simply no cause of complacency at all, and it shows that there is a very long way to go at this point of time.
Oh yeah, there's a long way to go, no cause for complacency at all. But Onno Ruhl, if I may come back to you, and the valid point is that a lot of people wonder, why do you only include Delhi and Mumbai? I mean, that is really not the right reflection as far as ease of doing business in India is concerned. And some of the parameters that you see, a construction permit, for example, not very relevant to these 2 markets there.
Well, that is a correct point, and it's something that we've been criticized for in the past. This is a global ranking, so it's really difficult to look at every city in every country across the globe, which is why in most countries we look at only 1. In the countries above 100 million, we look at 2. Now, in order to deal with that issue in India, because obviously jobs are not being created just in Delhi and Mumbai, also in Chennai and Ranchi and Guwahati, wherever you want. We have partnered, as I think you know, with DIPP, CII and FICCI on the state ranking report, and which has been issued about a month ago. And I think you know that this has created a very positive buzz of competition between states to improve faster. So the complementarity of these 2 efforts, I think, will deal well with the challenge that the government has set itself in India. One is to look good and perform well in the global rankings, and the other is to make sure that every state in India works to improve its business climate.
Michelle, I want to bring this to you because India ranks at 155 in terms of starting up a business. Now look at the kind of ecosystem there really is. The startup scenario is buzzing with action, startups mushrooming every single day. Yes, we have improved from a 4-month period to a 29-month period here, but given the current scenario, it takes 24 hours in Singapore to start a business. Why should it take 29? What is it that the government needs to do?
See, I think the government is very seized of this matter, and I think they are actually trying to even improve on this 27 days of incorporation by getting into an online system, where you can register your company online with a checklist system that can actually make it a 24-hour process. But all this takes a little bit of time, but I am very, very confident that this will happen sooner than later. So I'm not worried. I think the main thing is that if you can actually incorporate a business within 27 days from what used to take several months, I think is a huge improvement. So I think now to get from 27 days to 24 hours, I'm sure will not be such a huge challenge.
Dr. Kumar, India ranks at a very poor 183 in dealing with construction permits and 138 in registering property. The fact that there is not going to be a central land law, it's really being left to the states to decipher for themselves. Does this squeeze the room for improvement there, leaves very little room?
No, I think the land bill had nothing to do with this, I'm afraid, because the land bill is about acquisition of very large, above 100-hectare properties. This is about much smaller properties where, you just can't register a property, you have it with you. It's not a matter of acquisition. So I think this is a matter of much more of very petty, low level, but very systemic and big, and pervasive corruption in the system, where lots of rents are made. And I think this is one place where I think, like in Gujarat, everything should be digitized and put online so that, all of this land registration business can be sorted out very quickly with the help of IT, and that is what should be done.
Well, that's right. I mean, I think the corruption stink there is just so evident as far as our own ranking is concerned. A very bad 183. But Kiran, if I may bring this back to you, we still rank at 178 when it comes to enforcing contracts. What is it that we need to do to strengthen our laws on that front? It does suggest that we have very little regard for contracts. Look at the number of cases that end up in the courts.
I think a lot has to be done in terms of enforcing contracts. Our legal system is just not doing what it's supposed to do. I think we are wasting a lot of court time and legal time because somehow courts don't take quick decisions on many simple matters. They keep dragging on cases, and I think the appellate system also should be used very effectively. I think many cases that come to the court can be dealt with through an appellate system, but I think we are unnecessarily bringing every single issue to the court. And therefore, I think dispute resolution becomes a very long drawn out process because we know that our courts neither have the capacity nor the interest to basically deal with matters on an expeditious basis. And I think that's where I think we really have a big challenge, and we need to focus on that and see whether we can do a lot of the dispute resolution at an appellate level itself without bringing it into the courts.
Very valid point indeed. But just to stay with you for a while, 133 as far as trading across borders is concerned, does this bother you that this may actually hamper the ambitious Make in India program?
Well, I think, again, if you sort of rely on technology and basically databases to basically make that cross-border trade much more easy, I think that will help a big deal. I think our customs need to really focus a lot on getting movement of trade and goods much more expeditiously, and I think we need to rely a lot more on technology and self-regulation. I think there is too much of controls which actually slows down the process. So I think we need to look at things like self-regulation, we need to look at automatic approvals and regulatory approvals for cross-border trade. And back it with a very strong vigilance system and an audit trail. I think that's what is really required to address this area of cross-border trade.
Onno Ruhl, you're the man who scripted this, and so let me bring this back to you and let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is taxation. We've actually significantly slipped a notch there, and we haven't gone up. What do you believe needs to be done as far as the tax front is concerned? Some right noises, yes, being made by the government, but just to pick your brains on this.
Well, the key with the listing on taxes is how easy it is to pay taxes. And of course a simple tax structure makes that easy, but things like e-filing and e-payment also really help. It's not so much about the level of the taxes in India, actually has relatively few issues there. The taxes are at reasonable levels. I mean, we can go to my hobby horse, the GST, which we're very happy that the government continues to push and hopefully will manage to get through very shortly, because that will help a lot. On the doing business ranking, a lot can be achieved by what has already been done on e-filing and e-payment, and further work that is underway on that score, both in Delhi and Mumbai. So I'm actually quite optimistic for that ranking for next year.
Dr. Kumar, if I may throw the ball back in your court, it has to be easy to pay taxes, and like he said, his hobby horse is the GST. What do you think are the other reforms that the government should focus on? Tax administration does need an overhaul, like you said.
One, as I said, we must improve our tax collection, tax administration. It should become investor friendly. They should not have targets. A very big reform is needed in the tax administration side. Second, I think what we have to do is to clean up our building building permits, construction permits. The third is the enforcement of contracts. The fourth is that the exit time taken for countries for companies to exit when they're already not doing well is far too long. It was an average of 7 years. So that long awaited bankruptcy law should be now expedited. The fourth is that we have improved a few notches on our starting the business, but it still takes us 27 days to start a business. In Singapore it's done in 24 hours. So I don't see why we can't improve on that, and given that this Prime Minister is so focused on doing e-governance, all of this is very much a part of that. So I think if those are the 4 or 5 things that we need to really focus on if we want to break into the top 50.
Fair point, but what puzzles me a little, Mr. Onno Ruhl, is the fact that India has actually gone down 6 notches as far as getting credit is concerned. Now, what is that being attributed to? This does leave me a little puzzled, and many people in the government are also wondering what is that on account of.
Actually, it's not been tougher. It's the same, but it's gotten easier in other countries because this is a relative ranking. So when you see a smallish drop in the rankings like there, typically what it means is no reform was recognized in India, but other countries did do reforms. It's obviously an area where India performs relatively well. It could do even better, of course, but our judgment is not that it has become tougher, it's just that other countries have moved up.
All right, quick closing comments. We've discussed in detail, Kiran, about what should and should not be done. But in terms of the low-hanging fruits, which ones do you think the government needs to go out there immediately and pick and address the issues to further improve the list of and ease of doing business here?
So I think there are 3 low-hanging fruits, The first, of course, is GST. The moment we implement GST, I'm sure you will see our rankings jump. The second is dispute resolution. I think dispute resolution has to be taken out of courts and into arbitration systems and appellate bodies, I think this will also help us to improve the optics on dispute resolution. And the third area is really the insolvency law. I think if we can actually come out with an insolvency law sooner than later, this will also see our rankings jump.
You do want the insolvency law to be in place. We do hope Parliament functions in the winter session and we will perhaps see that debut. But Dr. Kumar, China has slipped up 1 notch. India has gone up 4. Can India encash on this opportunity given the slowdown also that's been spoken about across our neighboring borders?
Well, they are 84th and we are 130. So actually that's really just not a comparison. What the opportunity we have to grasp on is the fact that their real wages are rising and a lot of industry is moving out of China. But unfortunately, if our business ranking remains where it is, and then that investment which will move out of China will go to our competitor countries like Vietnam, Bangladesh, Thailand, and may not come to us. So it's not a matter of Chinese rankings which are way ahead of us, despite the fact that they are also about 10 times bigger in their manufacturing sector. But more importantly, that we will lose out to our smaller neighbors and competitors if we don't get our act together.
All right, one final question, and I'll have to get to the man who scripted this report. Onno Ruhl, the top 50 club is where we want to break into. That's the ambition. That's where the Prime Minister envisages India to be. When do you see that happen?
It took Russia 5 years to get from 123 to 51. It took Rwanda, really spectacularly, 4 years to get from about 180 to number 32. So that's the kind of time span you're looking at, because those were really heroic efforts. Of course, India compares more with Russia than with Rwanda, because it's a large country. It's even much larger. So 4 or 5 years would be a really good result. I think what is important is, now that the trend of decline has been reversed, to see a significantly bigger jump next year. You set your own target. I would love to see it. And then to move from there, because once the momentum is there, I think there could be a positive snowball effect.
All right, we've been able to arrest or stem the fall, as it were, and we're beginning to notch up. Thank you very much, each one of you, for being with us on this very special edition as we discuss and debate the ease of doing business report.
Thank you,
Kiran, Dr. Rajiv,
thank you, bye.
And
Thanks.
of course, Onno Ruhl. Thanks very much indeed for being with us. And to you, the viewers, thanks very much for being with us and listening to the perspective that our experts get to you. Ease of doing business, will India break into the top 50 club, is what we'll have to wait and watch.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.